There's a moment many of us know too well. You wake up early, before emails, before meetings, and your chest already feels tight. Not because something has gone wrong, but because something might. A decision you didn't foresee, a cost you didn't anticipate, a rule you didn't know applied to you. And suddenly, your mind is running simulations. You might have, if I miss something? What if this one mistake cost me everything? What if I fail the people who depend on me? This is another episode of MoloMolo African Tech Stories. Let's go. Hi, and welcome to another first episode of MoloMolo African Tech Stories for 2026. We made it, man. Welcome. I'm Dr. PK. I want to start today with a personal story. About 7 months ago, I started my entrepreneurial journey. MoloMolo Tech became a registered company. I did what many tech professionals do. I planned carefully, I evaluated risks, I ran the numbers, and at least the ones I knew about. But what I didn't understand fully was how medical expenses here in Germany really work for self-employed. Not because I was careless, but because the system didn't always explain itself clearly, specifically in German. Months later, however, I realized that there were gaps, important ones. And suddenly, I was carried into a new quiet fear. One wrong step could make a financial disaster, not just for my family, but for the company as well. Now, let me give you some context. Self-employment in Germany is incredibly difficult to navigate. One of the things that, unfortunately, is not so easy to quite understand is that you no longer have the protection of an employer to pay half of your medical expenses when it comes to your gross salary. So all of a sudden, what happens is you need to not only negotiate, but anticipate what you'll be paying in terms of self-employment. And that is on a pro rata and from an estimation perspective. What does that mean? It means that even if you as a business don't really know initially how much you will earn, you ultimately need to give the medical insurance some projection on what the monthly income would be. And based on that, they will charge you, wait for it, 20% of that income. 20%. So that's the backdrop. And this, as you can imagine, was an incredible pill to swallow when I started realizing that my budget no longer made sense. But at the same time, like I said, I was navigating German bureaucracy. So I had forms, deadlines, terminology that assumes you already understand the system, different offices to walk into, different interpretation, Google Translate. Some gave you the same facts, but oftentimes they had different outcomes. And when I reached out to financial institutions for support, specifically, I won't mention them, but they are red and they are all over Munich. They offered if I didn't have no collateral, I didn't have a long local history, which I don't. I've only been here for 5 years. Then, unfortunately, I had a one-liner, which is, unfortunately, Mr. Cantway, we cannot back you. You are too much of a high risk. Just a polite no, but no thanks. Nobody was hostile. Just nobody was unfair. But the stress was constantly there. It was constant. And that's when something became very clear to me. This wasn't just a personal pressure. This was a systemic stress. This was entrepreneurial stress. If you're a tech entrepreneur, especially an immigrant founder or solo entrepreneur, specifically in Europe or specifically in Germany, this pressure is probably living with you every single day. Why do smart, hardworking teams feel stuck? Miscommunicating, working in silos, and always running late. These aren't people problems, these are system problems. On the 3rd of February 2026 at 6 p.m. Central European Time, I'm hosting a live webinar, our first one, titled Breaking Down Silos with Capella and MATLAB. We will be exploring how system thinking, Capella, and MATLAB Simulink help teams build shared understanding, define clear interfaces, and reduce delays and rework. This will be a live seminar on LinkedIn and YouTube. So save the date, 3rd of February 2026. See you all there. So let's talk about stress. Not the obvious kind, but not burnout hairlines or dramatic breakdowns. It's about the slow, invisible kind, the kind that keeps you awake at night, lives in your chest during the day, and follows you even when you think work is done. The stress of being responsible without a safety net, the stress of entrepreneurship. Studies have shown that the chronic uncertainty is one of the biggest drivers of stress among entrepreneurs. Not workload, not hours, but ambiguity, not knowing what you might have missed, what rules apply to you, what the real risks are, and whether the system will catch you or let you fall. In my case, the stress didn't come from bad decision. It came from unclear systems. The healthy system, the financial systems, administrative systems, each operating with its own assumptions. And in the systems thinking perspective, which we'll dive deeper, we call this misalignment between the individual and the system. You're doing your best inside a structure that was not designed with you and your reality in mind. In everyday entrepreneurial life, this shows up like you think you've done the due diligence, but the system says you should have known this already. Or I'm building responsibly, but the bank says, you're too risky. Or in other words, you're thinking, I'm protecting my family, and yet, your body thinks, yeah, well, we are under constant threat from your lack of good eating. So same effort, different interpretation. And when systems don't make assumptions visible, the burden shifts to the individual. That burden becomes stress. Now imagine a different way of thinking. Just imagine. Imagine instead of constant worry, mental workload, endless second guessing, there were clear interfaces between you and the system. Clear rules, clear responsibilities, and clear boundaries. In engineering, we design systems to reduce uncertainty, right? But as entrepreneurs, we are often forced to absorb uncertainty, which is something that is always difficult. In my entrepreneurial journey, it had started with clear explanation of if it had started with clear explanations, of medical risk, a very clear logic on how to go about navigating financial institution, a clear pathways for support, then the stress would have disappeared. It would have been manageable. It would have disappeared, but it would have been manageable, right? Not because I'm stronger, but because the system would have been clearer. And this is where stress becomes deeply personal. Unmanaged stress doesn't just affect performance. It affects how you present who you are with your family, how patient you are with yourself, and how much fear you carry silently. You replay decisions in your mind over and over again. You scan all the threats. You live in a what if mode. You're almost waiting for calamity to happen to you. Not because you're weak, but because uncertainty keeps your nervous system on high alert. You're always on high alert. So here's the question I want you to leave with you today. If your business faced a shock tomorrow, do you know where the risks actually are? Which assumptions are you carrying alone? Which stress belongs to you? And which one belongs to the broken system? Because stress management isn't just about being calmer and, poised. It's about making uncertainty visible. Many tech entrepreneurs are not overwhelmed by work. They're overwhelmed by the invisible systems that they never taught to see. So again, this is so important for all of us to understand and for us to support that stress management is about managing the uncertainties as opposed to a mental block that needs you to keep calm. This was another episode of MoloMolo African Tech Stories. Happy 2026. I really hope all of us and the viewers who are watching this will be refreshed by seeing things in a different way when it comes to stress management. I'm Dr. PK, and remember, confidence is not a feeling. Until next time, ciao.